Welcome, everybody, to a Good Story podcast. Today, we're going to be covering Afghanistan. And since Afghanistan has thousands and thousands of years of history with different civilizations, cultures, empires coming through, we thought we'd only cover a part of Afghanistan's story, the more recent history. So today, you're going to be learning about the former monarchy of Afghanistan. Yes, Afghanistan did have a king. What happened when the king was overthrown, about the leaders who took over, who said they were for the people, but really they were just dictators. Student uprisings, what led to the communist takeover, the Soviet invasion, how the Soviets were expelled from Afghanistan eventually by the Mujahideen, the rise of the Taliban from the Mujahideen, how they beat everybody, and how the Taliban eventually secured power in Afghanistan, and currently, today, are now back in power. So, without further ado, take it away, Joe.
All right. Hello, everybody.
On this wonderful evening.
And Joe likes to do his accents.
Wait, what? Accents?
It's kind of like you're doing...
You sound like, I don't know.
Oh, I wasn't trying to, but you know.
Hello, everybody.
Okay, so let's start in the year 1973. You are a student in Afghanistan, and you have just joined a protest because you are unhappy with your king. His name is King Zaheer, and he has failed to enact governmental reforms that have been passed by parliament. At this point, too, I should preface, Afghanistan is kind of doing the whole British Empire thing. They have a constitutional monarchy with the parliament and all that. Even though it's kind of the reverse and the king has all the power and parliament's not as powerful. Anyway.
Do they have the queen on their coins, just like Canada?
That's a good question.
Those little bitches.
I'm going to go with no, because the king's name is Zaheer.
Yeah.
He's been king since 1933. And in the lead up to this event, like I said, he hadn't passed several reforms that Parliament had passed.
Well, he was rapidly modernizing the country. Like he built cities, highways, try to put in more Western ideals for like rights and education and that kind of stuff. Like he was like
boo, right?
Yeah. Boo women's rights. Boo education. Boo highways and cities.
Right, but he was also slow to pass some stuff that would give the parliament more power. And he also badly botched a famine in like 67 and 68 around then, which led to the deaths of like a ton of people in like the northern part of Afghanistan. Anyway, in 1973, Zaheer leaves the country because he has to go get a surgery on his eye. His eye has like hemorrhaged. And he goes to London. And after he gets his surgery, he's like, okay, you know what? I'm going to go to Italy for a couple days and kind of chill out. I'm the king. I can do what I want. And so he does. He goes and he stays at a nice island. And then while he's there, he hears that his cousin, his name is Daud Khan. I'm probably deep mispronounced. It's like Daoud. I'm going to call him D-Khan. So while Zaheer was gone getting his eye fixed, D-Khan used to be part of the military. And he had a lot of influence with the military. So he got the military on his side. And he had the support of the people because they didn't like Zaheer because how he botched the famine and how he was handling parliament. So basically, they just kind of did a coup and were like, we're going to do this. By the way, Zaheer, you're no longer king. And they kind of sent him a message. And he was like, okay. And he kind of had to abdicate.
Stay on the island.
Well, that's smart. Like, you're like, you know what? I'm just not going to go back because I'll be killed. And then, they threw a bloodless coup, meaning enough people agreed with him were like, there was no fighting. So, so he's like, well, they threw literally a bloodless coup. No one supports me because no one fought. I'm just going to stay here and chill out the rest of my life. I don't want to fuck things up and die.
Yeah, exactly. And 7 people in total died in the whole coup, and it was accidental. A tank driver was trying to avoid hitting a truck, and he swerved off the road and went into a river and drowned.
Oh my god!
And there were like 6 police officers that died only because they mistook like a group of protesters for people who were more violent, and so they got shot. Anyway, it was all accidental. So 7 people died in total. Fall of the Afghan monarchy. Even though I'm going to put "fall of monarchy" in quotations there, because Decon just kind of called the new government a republic and put himself in charge as a dictator, basically.
The as one does. Yes.
Yeah, as one does. Until he was eventually overthrown himself, as it goes.
Well, the funny thing was that, like, he also pushed progressive politics. Like, it wasn't that much of a change. He pushed progressive policies as well.
Oh yeah, no, he didn't. He left most of the government intact. Like, he didn't change any of the economic systems or anything like that. He just kind of took over and called it a republic instead of a monarchy. That's
well, the thing I gathered from this though was like all these progressive policies kind of pissed off like most of Afghanistan because it's such a rural nation. Like a bunch of it was like a bunch of like mountain towns in like
for sure, yeah. It's a lot
of nowhere who are like, well, we're Islamic. We don't believe in this shit. Like, fuck you.
It's a lot of foreign culture. It's basically like you taking foreign American Western values and implanting them in this rural, traditional culture. And yeah, a lot of them didn't like those policies, and they thought it was leading them away from their traditional roots. But you could say that about any civilization, really.
Yeah, but like it was back in the day before the country was modernized. Like, this is back when like these rural civilizations like didn't contact anybody else. They're like goat herders in like bumfuck nowhere. Like,
oh yeah, it's still kind of like that in certain areas.
It's still kind of like that, but it's like they would hear about how like, oh, your new king or your new dictators says this is how the country's gonna be run now. You're gonna do this, this, and this, and they're like, no, like send someone to tell me otherwise, and they never did.
Yeah, the capital city of Kabul in Afghanistan has been inhabited for the last like 3,500 years, but we don't know who built it. It's just been that city's been continuously inhabited for like 3,500 years.
Incredible civilization. Like, who knows where humanity really began? Like, it's the Middle East is such a fascinating area that we're never going to understand because there's so much conflict there. We can never truly like study it and like have like archaeologists go there and figure things out. Like, it's never going to happen.
Afghanistan has literally been at war since before Alexander.
It's an important piece of land that unites the East and the West. Like, it is.
Yeah, it's like the trade route. It's the crossroads. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Like China and Asia and Russia, they're all right there. And then Europe is on the other side of it. And the Middle East is kind of like in the middle of it. And Afghanistan shares a giant border with all of Nepal. And it's right there, like Africa, Asia, Europe, kind of centralized in Afghanistan. So countries have been trying to like grab it for thousands of years.
Yeah. Well, anyway, that's the story of the fall of the monarchy and how Zaheer kind of just had to, retire.
So what happened to him, Joe?
Well, he abdicated in on August 26th of that year, and he kind of retired. I don't know. I didn't look up what happened to him
because he saw the writing on the wall.
Was he just like chilling on the island for the rest of his life? He's just like, you know what? I'll just chill here on this island. It's fine.
I'm assuming
he realized he wouldn't keep power, and he realized that like if it was going to happen, it was going to happen violently. So he's like, I'm going to get the fuck out while I can.
Yeah, I know, but I want to know what happened the rest of his life. Did he just like go play checkers? Did he just hang out? He's like, I was a former king, guys. Hey, and they're like, hey, we think we recognize you. And he's like, yeah, I used to run a country. And he's just sitting there playing chess in the park or whatever. That's how I always wonder with these former dictators that run away to other countries, like Mexico. I think Bautista from Cuba, didn't he move to Florida after the Castro overthrew him? I can't remember, but
depends, man. It depends.
Do they just chill? Do they just hang out? Like, I'm just gonna hang out in the park.
No, like it's a big asterisk. It depends. Like, are the country you're fleeing to, are they cool with you or not? Like, look at all the former Nazis. Like, they flew to South. They fled to South America, and they were being hunted. And they hid perfectly fine. Dr. Mengele died of old age. Like, as long as you flee to somewhere who doesn't care who you are, where you come from, like, it doesn't fucking matter. Like,
Yeah.
You can commit atrocities.
All
as
right,
long as
so you want to know what happened to him? I just looked it up. Yeah, he like basically spent exile. He was gone for like 29 years, but after that, like a while, Afghanistan was kind of like, you know what? You're not really a threat anymore. You can come back. And so he came back and he got to live in his palace and when he died in 2007 and was kind of hailed, like Jared said, as kind of like a national progressive figure who kind of pushed for more progressive policies.
So he died in Afghanistan.
Yep. Died in his palace.
All right. That's a good way to go.
Yep.
All right, Jared, take it away.
Oh, is Joe done? Okay.
Well, yeah, that was it. Sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. I wasn't sure. Mine, it actually does pick up where that left off. I was going to preface all of my stuff with some bullet points that Joe went over more in detail. But so after he stepped down, some communist groups were just kind of like, well, that's just kind of part of why he stepped down, because he realized that things were happening in this country that he had no control over, because the people were revolting. And they were revolting partially because like they didn't like all of his progressive policies. But the other side of that coin was the communists were supporting them. And they're supporting them in a way where it's like, we're going to give you guns and shit to take back this country, and we're going to kind of support you like economically.
Allegedly. No,
Allegedly. There's no proof of that, sir.
We're going to allegedly give you resources and weapons. But okay, anyway. So they support Afghanistan through all of these means. And eventually they have a new prime minister. I'm going to butcher this fucking name. Hafizullah Amin. He was like put into power. And he kind of pushes some of the Soviet crap. Like he's like,
the Soviet crap.
Oh, come on. We know what that
I know, but it's just so funny to hear you be like, and he pushed for Soviet policy. No, he pushed for that Soviet crap. Not biased at all there, Jared.
A history is written by the victors,
which led to more infrastructure and more rights for women. And unfortunately, it was very like anti-religious Soviet propaganda, like very like atheist Soviet propaganda, which so
that's not good.
Yeah, obviously the same people in the countryside who opposed the previous rulers were like, well, y'all took them out, but we also don't like y'all because y'all also pushed this anti-religious like atheist agenda. So obviously, like with all the socialism thrown in and all the crazy increases in taxes, all these people in the middle of nowhere were like, well, even the former Afghani leaders didn't push us for these kind of taxes. So they were very invasive into these rural people's like life. Like obviously they're like, well, not only do I not like these taxes, but all of our women, like giving them these rights and things, like that's not okay.
And giving them all these ideas.
Yeah. Give them all these ideas that they should have more. But
anyway, go outside without their faces covered? Unheard of.
How dare you? So
can't show your face.
So they had a little bit to say about this, and he responded in the Soviet way. He disappeared all of them. Disappeared, I mean, executed and kidnapped. But
I don't think you have to explain it. When you say
I don't want to disappear
in a Soviet manner.
No, they just took a trip, Jared. They're still wandering around Afghanistan to this day. They just took a trip to the valley.
Just missing. Anyway, this led to riots all over the country. Which, what was the name of the president? Nur Mohammad Taraki. He turned to the Soviets for help, for aid. And what the Soviets decided to do is, so they were like, okay, well, we'll give you aid. We're going to have you removed, and we're going to invade Afghanistan with land and air and naval forces, like to like go like in the sea. So like they invaded Afghanistan. Like they're like, well, you obviously handle this, so you're out. Invade the country. So when they forced him out, they had Taraki killed and shit. Who took presidency? Oh no, here. Amin. Yeah, Amin. He had Taraki killed and he took the presidency himself. So the general secretary of the Soviet Union decided, like, hey, we can take control of this. Like this right here is not okay. This is Afghanistan for us. Like, this is our little basket in the middle of the world century. we have Asia, like China is on our side, but we don't have a lot of Africa, of Europe. So this is kind of like a keystone. Like Afghanistan is a great place to have an air base because it's a great like middle ground for fucking everything. You have a lot of land if you have Afghanistan as an air base. So you can refuel there. You can stage there. It's a great invasion point as far as like your air superiority goes.
Also, it was on the Soviet border at the time because the Soviets actually were like a big country.
Well, you gotta look at Nepal. Like they didn't technically have Nepal at that point. It was kind of ambiguous because Nepal it's hard to hold because it's so mountainous. The big thing for this was Pakistan. Though Pakistan,
so was Afghanistan.
Yeah, but Pakistan did not like Afghanistan at this point. Like they were at odds. Like that'll come into play later. So essentially, like Russia was worried that this would become an Islamic state because a lot of the area had been like become Islamic states, like Iran and other countries in the area, instead of being Western or Eastern controlled, like United States and NATO or Soviet Union, they had become their own Islamic states, like Iran. So the Soviets were very worried this was going to happen. So on Christmas Eve, 1979, like that's when the actual invasion took place. Like that's when they actually like committed Spetsnaz troops, and like it was a full-on invasion. They took cities, they took roads, they took like critical infrastructure, and it was essentially like they captured it almost without resistance. Like because like they sent in their Spetsnaz. Like that is essentially these Soviet Navy SEALs. Like they sent in their best, most highly trained troops to take these critical areas, which conventional warfare would say we won. We took all the important stuff.
Yes. I've seen Deadliest Warrior.
We took all your shit. Now it's our shit. So essentially, like the Soviets, like, okay, we took everything you'll have. We captured and exiled your president, and we replaced him with what was the guy's name? Babla Kamal. And so essentially, what this did was it pushed the tribal warlords to like the mountains. Like they exited the cities. Like all the tribes and all the fighters, like they exited. Like the Soviets took everything, almost like very little resistance. And then essentially the rest of the world saw this as the Soviets taking Afghanistan as their own sort of like colony. Like they saw this as like colonization of Afghanistan because like they were literally like took it militarily, traded out leaders for their own. And so the United States and other countries started to funnel weapons into Afghanistan through Pakistan, which Pakistan was very they were very sympathetic towards Afghanistan at this point because they were Islamic. They saw this as some sort of like outer interference, and they readily took help from other countries and like funneled that help through their own borders to Afghanistan. Great example of this is actually Charlie Wilson's war. Operation Cyclone supplied weapons to Afghanistan like 80s and 90s, and was actually a large reason why the Afghani resistance fought against the Soviets so successfully. Great movie with Tom Hanks. Highly recommend. But this kind of like
Hanks.
Yeah. This kind of like clusterfuck of like foreign influencers and fighters, like it created like a notable figure, which was one of the actual supporters of the Mujahideen, which is what the United States and other countries supported. One of the figures who helped them out was actually Osama bin Laden. And he'll come into prominence. He'll come into prominence later, obviously. But he was one of the ones helping the Mujahideen retake the country from the Soviets, which obviously they still had the upper hand because they were fucking Soviet Russia. They had MiGs, they had T-72 tanks. They had the better shit in the war. But never underestimate a bunch of religious extremists who don't have 50 or
just in the sentence there. Never underestimate a bunch of religious extremists. Continue.
Yeah. Pretty much you can, but like you got to think like they don't think in the terms of like 10, 20, 50 years. They think of in terms of like 1,000 years. Like these people, like they don't care if you win the war or win every battle in the war. Like the Soviets, they didn't lose a battle in this war. They did what the United States did in Vietnam. It was search and destroy tactics. It was all search and destroy. They won every battle they fought in, but these people didn't care. It was like their time horizon was like, oh, well, we don't care if we lose for the next 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. We're going to fight this war for 1,000 years if it takes it. And countries generally aren't okay with that. In fact, what happened was Mikhail Gorbachev took over as general secretary in the Soviet Union. Had a very different foreign policy, which shifted feelings in the USSR. They kind of saw it as an endless war, and they kind of saw it as a waste of money. And so they started like slowly drawing back their forces because, again, they didn't have the same resolve the Mujahideen did. Like they didn't see this as like, okay, well, if you're going to fight for 50 years, we'll fight for 100 years. Like it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to us.
It's the inevitable death of colonization. We did the same thing to the British. All America had to do in the American Revolution was keep an army in the field. It didn't matter if we lost every battle because eventually they would just not have enough money to keep the war going.
Oh yeah, well, like look at every single country that we've stayed in, like had our troops stay in every single one we pulled out of. The differences are night and day. Like Japan, Korea, Germany, every country we've stayed in has become a great democracy with like great Western values. Every country we pulled out of has become a hell overnight.
Well, when you were talking about the whole fighting for 50, 100 years, I remember the story of this years after the Vietnam War. There's like, a Viet Cong fighter general. I don't remember what rank. Just like a guy was talking to an American. And he said, the American goes like, yeah, we never lost a battle to you. And the Viet Cong guy looks at me and he's like, you're right. You won every battle, but we won the war.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's all you got to do. That's
well, an interesting idea for that is though, that's that's one of the problems with democracies is foreign policy, because in democracy, your foreign policy.
Everyone you're about to hear fascist come out.
No, and then
also you just hear music in the background, just like, and that's why we need a strong leader like me to take hold of America.
That comes later, Bender. Spoiler alert.
The fact that Vietnam did very, very well during the COVID pandemic. But anyway.
Well, yeah, they had to shut down their entire country.
But my point being, like, public opinion can shift policy at some point. So eventually we pulled out of Vietnam, we pulled out of other countries. And so you got to say, like, other countries that don't have that problem will never experience it. Like China right now will never pull out of these countries with their Golden Rose initiative. Like foreign policy is so like dependent on public opinion. Like Gorbachev pulled out of the Afghanistan conflict in 1989, and the Soviet Union fell in 1991. Like the government disbanded and so after that, the Mujahideen had control of Afghanistan, but in 1992, the government disbanded, and with the Mujahideen taking control, other domestic powers fought for power, and there's like a giant struggle the next few years, which I know Bender's gonna get into. But after the Mujahideen fell, there was a little leader called Mullah Omar who led what is now known as the Taliban, and they got the new spot in Afghanistan. They got some Pakistan support because they are an Islamic state, and that's kind of probably going to lead into what Bender has talked about. But yeah, foreign policy is a very interesting idea because, like, at what point is too much too much? Like,
well, I want to push back a little bit on that because you said, like, I agree and disagree because, I mean, Iraq and Afghanistan have been widely unpopular for many years now. They've been in the single digits of popularity, but remember Obama in 2008, Obama said, we're going to pull out.
And he committed more troops later on because
I know, but that's my point.
He realized the strategic support, the importance of it.
Right, but public opinion had no effect on it. I'm saying leaders in a democracy can still ignore because maybe I'm a little cynical, but I think most people really just don't care about anything beyond like their, health, their family's health, their friends. So like if you say like, well, if I ask you like, oh, do you support Iraq or Afghanistan war? Then a bunch of people say no. but then they just go home and watch Netflix. Like, I
They
don't really
understand
know
the
if that
larger
really affects
picture.
it.
They don't understand the larger picture, which other countries can like make the larger picture argument if you can like support it indefinitely.
But do you think that it's inherently democracy? Because I would argue that it's
no,
not.
I'd say it's more inherently economic. Because
Yeah.
think about how America works.
It wasn't economic though. Like the war in Afghanistan is costing less than 0.5% of our annual budget. Like that wasn't the reason. Like
no, but we're making money. There's more profiteering. There's a lot of anything that makes us money is something that Americans can get behind because we're a capitalist.
But look at Vietnam.
That's
also
the name of the game.
Vietnam wouldn't have taken a large force either. Like we have larger forces in dozens of other countries. We have military forces in over 100 countries. Like the fact is,
yeah, I agree, and I think public opinion swayed more Vietnam. But my point was Iraq and Afghanistan wasn't. I'm not disagreeing with anything you're saying. I'm saying that, like you said, that well, the problem with democracy and like its foreign policy is a big issue. But the Soviets, when they pulled out of Afghanistan, were not a democracy and still not a democracy. Sorry, Putin.
That was some other problems, though. That was because the Soviet Union was like struggling economically.
Right. So I'm saying that my original point was that Iraq and Afghanistan, though, too, was super unpopular for well over a decade now, probably like 14 years now, more.
The problem, though,
we still stayed there for 14 more years.
But the Soviet people were behind Gorbachev. Gorbachev really led the drive of like, hey, we shouldn't be in these wars. Like he swayed the idea for the Soviets. It's very like quick to change for the American people too. Like Bush to Obama, or let's start before that. Let's go Clinton to Bush to Obama, Obama to Trump. Like it's a very sway left to right for foreign policy that has really changed the landscape of the Middle East, like very dramatically both ways.
Yeah.
You're right. I fuck democracy. We're going fascism. You've convinced me, Jared.
Well, no, I just think we should have a philosopher king, but yeah.
I agree with the philosopher king thing, but I'll push back and say, like I said earlier, I don't think it's inherently democracy per se. It's like I said, it's the effort of colonization inevitably ends with an armed conflict that is unwinnable by the mother country.
I will push back on that a little bit by saying by saying half-hearted colonization.
Oh yeah, that's fair.
No one's going whole hog. If you went whole hog, if the Soviets did it, if the United States did it, then it'd be done. Like it'd be a colony and it'd be taken care of. But no one's willing to commit. The United States won't commit. The Soviets didn't commit. The British didn't commit. If you commit, it would be a colony.
Yeah, if you don't want to commit, then don't go there in the first place.
Yes.
Actually, what fucked the British was they didn't commit to America, and then they tried to commit and actually enforce laws, and America was like, "But we like not having laws."
Yeah, we're used to not being. I remember, taking a history. I taking one of Light's classes. He was like, "Yeah, basically, you had all Americans who just like, basically was like a libertarian society. They were just like, yeah, they made their own shoes, and then I think Britain like banned from making their own shoes or something, or like taxed.
Well, no, it was a wave of new laws which the United States pushed back against, which Britain's like, okay, we won't do it. We'll pull that back. We're not gonna tax.
Right, we're used to having no laws.
They were like, well,
but it's not like they were
this one, and it's like no, and then like, okay, we'll add this one. It's like no. So they kept like adding stuff. The United States like kept telling them no, and eventually they're like, okay, well, if you're not going to listen to us, we'll add troops to this like order. And the United States said like, absolutely not. Thus the revolution.
Yeah, but it wasn't like the British were pushing like laws that the rest of the British citizens across the empire weren't already following. They was just trying to bring it to America, and they were.
America was like,
because they were trying to add like tax revenue because they were fighting wars against Napoleon, or not Napoleon. They were fighting wars in Europe, so they're trying to add tax revenue. The United States like, no, we're not paying taxes. Like we never pay taxes. Like what do you mean?
It's like Britain's like, but the rest of the empire's paying taxes, and we're like, yeah, but fuck you.
Yeah, the rest of the empire has all this, and we're like, yeah, we're good. Yeah. We do our own thing over here. Yeah, they also told them not to expand onto this native land that they had like trees with, and Americans were also like, yeah. But it's mine now.
But it's mine now.
All right, I guess that brings me up. So all of this leading from the fall of the monarchy, it all is tied together. the Soviet invasion and occupation of Afghanistan, and the Mujahideen eventually winning is all tied to our lovely, the now apparently progressive, peace-loving Taliban, or so they say.
I don't know.
Well,
Progressive.
Oh no, that was what they said. I was making a joke because that's what like one of them said. Like, oh yeah, we're totally for like being more open and stuff. And
oh yeah, no, that's the best part about it. Like they said
afraid.
all that stuff back then, and they're saying the same thing now.
Oh yeah, that's just what you do. It's
nothing to see here. Nobody.
They were nicely chanting "Death to America." Don't worry, guys. Don't worry.
Pinky up.
So anyways, so it's actually the Taliban is actually rooted in the Pashtun nationalism. If you don't know, Pashtuns make up a huge, I think the majority of Afghanistan, but they also are huge in Pakistan as well, and that will tie into later. And so there's different ethnicities and tribal groups in Afghanistan, but they're a big one. And Taliban actually stands for Students of Islam, and they started out as sort of non-fighters. They were just, apparently scholars and stuff and whatnot. But to go back in time a little bit, the 1978 Sour Revolution takes place. And that's basically what Jared talked about. And there's a Marxist backed by the Soviets, and they attack and, take over and whatnot. So what happens, there's a city called Herat, Herat. And so basically the Marxists were like, hey, we're going to make a law for girls to go to schools. And boy, did the Herat people not like that one bit.
Oh,
they
no.
were not happy about that. Like, all this other stuff we'll put up with.
The tolerant Soviets made a law that girls get to go to school.
Women do not get to go to school. Girls do not get to go to schools. You've crossed the line, mister.
The tolerant, people-loving Soviets made the law that girls can go to school.
Oh, my God. And so Herat, I believe, is the third largest city behind Kandahar and Kabul. And it's like a major hub, really conservative, as you can probably tell. So this spreads out the Mujahideen, and the Taliban are kind of a part of that, but not really. People often put them perfectly together, but the Mujahideen was basically just anybody fighting the Soviets. I mean, it was a very loose connection of people.
It's hard to put them together. Like, there were leftover Mujahideen fighters in the United States invaded Afghanistan. Like, if there were people who fought and Mujahideen who aided the United States, like, it's just like a loose group of people because, like, after the Soviet Afghan War, they split so much that like it was just kind of like you call almost anyone who fought a Mujahideen. So it was just kind of like the soldiers like were fucking
like the Viet Cong. I mean, it's just
yeah. We're against you. We're very broad with our names. I think as humans, we're just like, all right, you're all this one thing. You're all this. But the Taliban were a part of it. So. But they play almost. I mean, they're fighting, so they do play a big role, I guess. But and like the larger scale, they do not play a bigger role as we know them today yet. But so as Jared mentioned, the CIA allegedly starts funding through Pakistan because, again, Pakistan is big fans. They're highly Islamic, as Jared said. So they're like, all right, so we go through Pakistan, and that will play a big role because. What happens is in Pakistan and just maybe on the Afghan border between those two countries, they start setting up like really conservative Islamic schools, mostly funded by Saudi Arabia. So, it's the good stuff. It's the good stuff.
Yeah.
Nothing like a bunch of Saudi nationals boarding planes in the United States.
Oh, yeah. It's right. It's good stuff. Saudi Arabia, our allies, our good friends. They open up all these Islamic schools and all these like future Taliban leaders and whatever and fighters, they all like meet in these schools and stuff, and they become really, the Afghan Taliban leaders attend these schools. They become really radical. It's like one of the most radical type of Islam, like Islamic doctrines, very, very conservative that is being taught in these schools. And so they end up meeting up here and becoming even more radicalized and getting obviously financial support, weapons. And so it becomes like, but in the schools, it becomes like Islam is not just a religion now or even a way of life. It is now political. The idea that Afghanistan should be an Islamic state is now well in everyone's mind.
Well, that was the idea. Like the rest of the region had all become Islamic states. Like the biggest one was Iran, Pakistan. Like was it close after? Like a bunch of countries like surrounding Afghanistan were Islamic states. So the idea was like it's just Afghanistan now. It's like not part of the group.
Yeah. Well, that's gonna change. So the Taliban are viewed as heroes because so there's a city most of us Americans at least know as Kandahar, a city in Afghanistan, and after the Soviets leave, it's like chaos, like everywhere. It's warlords are fighting over places like rape, sexual assaults, like murder, torture. All of that is super common all over Afghanistan because the Mujahideen now don't have Mujahideen, I should say, don't have a common enemy to fight. So they all turn on each other. They all hate each other, or they're all fighting for power. I don't know if they hate each other. So they're all like, this country is just in chaos. And Kandahar
I believe less women's rights. No, I believe in less women's rights.
Who can believe in less women's rights? So anyways, you are just, there's tons of violence. And funny enough, the Taliban come in and are viewed as saviors because they come in and they're seen as the Islamic order because they are actually, funny enough, tamer, at least at the beginning, than all these other Mujahideen because they're not really, yes, they enforce conservative laws per se, but like they stop all the murders and all that stuff until later. And they become the bad guys.
Yeah.
But
no kidding. But like the funny thing was like Charlie Wilson's war, well, not the movie, the actual person, Charlie Wilson, the senator, said after the Soviets left Afghanistan, our biggest crime was not like supporting the Mujahideen in like keeping power because like they were our allies and they would have kept the Taliban from taking control if we would have just like, supported the correct, which air quotes.
Yeah, that's a little hard to, I mean, there was one guy.
But the Taliban were also technically part of the Mujahideen.
Technically, yes. But they would have like, kept the same guy in charge also when it happened. But you could also say it's Charlie Wilson just trying to keep his legacy together, which a cool fucking legacy. Highly recommend the book. Like his biography is fucking insane. A sitting U.S. senator went to Pakistan and helped smuggle arms over the border in Afghanistan. Like he actually went with the people and smuggled arms. Like fucking crazy, right?
That is crazy. Makes the end of Rambo 3 hit a lot different. But
it's like if Ted Cruz hopped in a boat in Texas with a bunch of like AK-47s and like took a boat to Cuba to help the Cuban rebels. Like crazy shit.
Yeah. Hold on. Keep talking about that because I just lost power
out Bender.
Yeah.
I was gonna say Bender lost power.
Power didn't go. What the fuck?
Bender's in the dark.
You still got Wi-Fi.
Oh my gosh, it's hilarious.
Also, to everyone in the audience, if you haven't seen Rambo 3, don't even if you haven't seen the first two, watch Rambo 3 and just cringe at the ending.
It's like the Expendables, but like a more normal movie version of that.
Yeah, but also at the end, they're basically calling the Mujahideen, which includes the Taliban, which we funded, freedom fighters, which, yeah, they are technically in a sense.
Technically, it's just like the Iran-Contra controversy or like the fact that Osama bin Laden went to college in the United States, all that kind of shit.
Yeah, they portray them as very much. There's even a nice quote at the end of the movie that's like, and these brave people continue to defend their homeland and will never surrender to foreign tyranny.
Well, it's like the new Mulan, where they film in that Chinese province where there's still slavery going on, like modern day slavery. It's like
I just think it's funny that like
there is no slavery here in China.
Freedom fighters we're calling terrorists.
That's right. No, you're right. You're right, Bender. You're right, Bender.
And fighting
China's utopia. Xi Jinping is a god king.
Winnie the Pooh is the devil and should be burned for his sins.
China is our overlords who dictate what we can say. But no, we get to say the glorious teachings of China.
Yep. All right, let's get back to this real quick. So Taliban come in and they just take over Kandahar. They take over all these areas, and they basically bring order to Afghanistan. So people are happy. They're like, "Yeah, Afghanistan, good job, Taliban." And so 1994, fighting the warlords. They're very, very good at fighting. They start off originally as a very, very tiny force. And their idea actually is to bring back the deposed king.
Yay!
So you can thank the Taliban. They had the idea to bring back the deposed king. That was the original goal, funny enough. That wasn't obviously what ended up happening. But so the more battles they won, the more they started getting funding from rich people in Afghanistan or just people in general, because they were like, wow, this tiny force is beating all these other guys. And, they're bringing, stopping the violence. So, hey, we'll support them. So they want to bring back Muhammad Zaheer. And what happens is they become like what's known as the unknown force in Afghanistan. They capture 12 of the 34 provinces. They just move very quickly. People just start surrendering to them because they're like viewed as this unstoppable force. And
the funny part of all this, well, not the funny part, the modern relevant part of this is that a lot of the Taliban weapons were like a bunch of shit the Soviets left. Bunch of AK-74 tanks. The Soviets
they just got a lot of better weapons based on what we
and weapons we sold them.
Yeah. Yes. So very interesting modern historical context. But yes, the Taliban had a bunch of Soviet shit and a bunch of Mujahideen shit that they got the United States. But yes, continue.
Yeah. No, when we invaded Afghanistan, we were being shot with our own guns. It's totally true.
Yes. Well, ours and a bunch of like old Soviet AKs that have had like hundreds of thousands of rounds like burned through them.
So they capture Kabul in 1996, and people are ecstatic. And now the whole bring back the king thing, it's fine or whatever. But they're kind of like, let's we've been so successful. Now we have the capital. We have all these provinces. Maybe we just keep power, and we add some rules, some laws to this land. I'm not going to name off all the things they banned because some things are obvious, but I looked up. They just went off the rails. They banned lobsters. Oh yeah, they banned chess. They banned.
That's smart people stuff, Bender. Like
free thinking.
Smart Jews have chess.
Clapping during sporting events was banned. Kite flying, which I thought was interesting because of I read The Kite Runner, great book. I don't know if that had anything to do with like certain ethnicities. I don't know, but they were like no kite flying, which was a huge thing in Afghanistan at the time. But so yeah, so there's tons of things they banned, like music, movies, all this stuff, VHS tapes, all that stuff. But
nothing like a good old fashioned book burning.
Yeah, I mean, those are all normal stuff. I thought the lobsters, I was like, poor lobsters. They're just like, you're out of here, you motherfuckers.
Well, they probably banned them because they couldn't get them.
Because they're shellfish?
Yeah, maybe it's Islamic law. I don't know, but I thought that was hilarious.
Do Islamists? Like, no, wait. In Islam, you keep kosher, right? Yeah. So they couldn't have lobsters. They're not kosher. Shellfish aren't kosher. Yeah.
Oh, well, I guess that's why the lobsters got the axe. But so then they just start killing people in a soccer stadium. They literally just turn a soccer stadium and like bring people in there, and they're just like they just start killing people. And they're like, wow, we like killing people. And they have the religious police that would just go around beating like women and people. And obviously this is when women had to cover themselves completely. Well, here's the thing. They wanted Islamic State, like Iran. They got that and more, because the actual, how women in Iran are basically covered except for their faces. That was deemed that was outlawed because that was deemed too like inappropriate. That's why they had to have the whole face coverings where only they could see out of it, because they were like, oh, Iran, those moderate pieces of shit with their
whores, you can see their eyes.
Yeah. You can't leave the house without a man, all that stuff too.
It's and so people actually had to black out their windows because in cities because the Taliban passed like a law saying, hey, like you can't be able to see, you're not allowed to see women even like through windows. So people had to like go and black out their windows because it was basically a law that you couldn't see, look at women like that. So they were like, all right, all the windows have to be blacked out.
What an odd
death rules. Like,
you imagine just walking around that society? How odd. Like, you're just mostly men, just, and maybe like one woman all covered up, but it's just like, I don't know, it's just weird. The idea of just one gender being like outside all the time and not seeing women.
See, like, they kept women inside in their basements to rape for the next like 30 years. Like, that's just what happened.
I thought you were gonna say, Joe, how weird it'd be to walk around and see a bunch of blacked out windows. But you're probably right. It would be weird to also see.
Have you ever been to Detroit or Chicago?
That as well, I guess. But yeah.
So what happens is now that they have power and they're completely comfortable, and they have all this one moderate guy. He was like the I think what was his nickname? The Lion of Pashtun or something. He got killed by them. Like he got suicide bombed, and so he died. And he was actually like a moderate, fairly moderate. He was a mujahideen, and he was like a great commander and stuff. He probably would have had the balance. That's who America should have supported, because he would have been like, well, we'll keep Islamic stuff, but I'm not like a crazy guy. But the Taliban, as everyone does when they get power, they were like, okay, now we're going to start going massacring minorities, because like, especially
they don't look like us.
Hazarans and the Uzbeks. And one of the reasons they did that was because some of them are Shia, and some of them during it was also Iran was sending in funding and stuff as well. So and then when the Taliban was fighting those regions to take over cities and stuff, and the provinces, they lost a lot of troops in these areas, so they got mad and they're like, all right, revenge time. So they just go and they're like, oh, you Shias, you're not really Muslim. And they just killed they killed like 8,000 people in one city, but they would just they started doing all the rape and like torture and everything that they basically rose to power to fight against. Now they're doing it. And they don't care. And they just kill a bunch of people, massacre a bunch of people. And what happens is that continues for 5 years until 2001. And our old friend Osama bin Laden decides to, with our good friends, the Saudis, help.
Saudi nationals.
Yeah. Well, the funding came from within Saudi Arabia too, but
and Osama bin Laden made up to about $20 million by shorting airline stocks. But yes.
Did he really do that? I didn't know that.
Yes. So the Taliban shorted airline stocks, significantly shorted them leading up to September 11th. And so they believe that the Taliban and Osama bin Laden made up to $20 million by shorting airline stocks.
Okay, I'm not going to lie. Yes, they're evil, but that's fucking genius. Hey, why don't we get rich off our terrorists?
Well, it funded a lot more terrorism.
Yeah. I was going to say that's that there's evil, and then there's super villain level evil.
The Glooming Tower is a great book on that. It's all about the Looming Tower. Sorry, the Looming Tower. It's all about how Osama bin Laden went to school in the United States. A lot of the pilots were trained by United States pilots. So they're we'll have Afghanistan pilots be trained by us. They can fly our planes. So
didn't one of the Chinese communists, one of the top guys, didn't he live in America too?
Yep.
Okay. And then Kim Jong-un lived in Switzerland. It's good to know that we've had a positive influence on everything.
He had a Western education. A lot of higher ups in North Korea do. They have a very strict caste system. Very interesting. I would watch there's a couple podcasts.
Oh my God, this nerd always reading.
I do a lot of reading, but yeah, Looming Tower is a great book by I can't remember who it's by, but it's about how Osama bin Laden his whole life is into how it led up to 9/11. But yeah, very crazy about how he profited off of realizing he could make money off of shorting stocks in the United States after 9/11.
Yeah, because I need to give you all the books I read in my Middle Eastern Studies class at grad school. I think you'd like all of them.
Recommend some to me. I'll probably read them. I think I think the Middle East is a very interesting region because like where it sits. It's between Africa and Asia and Europe. It's just like right there. So it has politics from all over the world. They're trying to cram down their throat. They have their own stuff, just pushing that out at the same time. So it's been a conflict region for human history, all of human history. So it's so interesting, like the area.
I can recommend one movie right now. It's called Waltz with Zaheer. It's like about the the Israeli invasion of Pakistan. It's fucking brutal, but it's good.
Israel of Pakistan?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
of like that area.
The 5-Day War.
Yeah, the 5-Day War.
7-Day War. Sorry, 7-Day War. Yeah.
7-Day War. Yeah.
I thought that you mean Palestine or Pakistan?
Palestine. My
bad. Yeah, Palestine.
I was like, kept saying Pakistan. I was like,
I kept saying,
I miss something in history.
It's a P.
They're all the same. Just admit it.
I know that's
Same.
racist. They're not all the same, but
they're all the same.
It's just a one giant area.
But yeah, the 7-Day War. It's about Waltz with Zaheer. That's what it's about. It's about a Jewish guy who starts remembering his time in the war, and he talks to all of his war buddies, and he's like, "Do y'all remember this? You remember the awful things we did?" And he was like, they were basically like, "What?" It's a whole study in how they basically just blocked out this whole thing in their life.
That's like the human like brain though. You block out the shitty parts of your life. I remember talking to oh shoot, it was one of our professors in college. I don't remember her fucking name. I think it was Marjorie Haas, but no, not Marjorie Haas. Fuck. It was one of our history professors. Bleep out the name, whatever. But she said went to a ranch with her husband, and they had to put down a horse that broke its leg, and her husband remembers the whole story. But she says she remembers nothing about going even on that trip at all because, like, you block out traumatic experiences. And so, like, it happened. All of her friends tell her that it happened. She didn't remember that it even happened. Like, she was even there. Like, that kind of stuff, it happens throughout all of human history. So the funny thing is, like, so many of our like accounts of human history are from like single sources. So if these single sources were actually there and actually experienced it, how much of their idea of what happened is tainted by like their own traumatic like twisting of the narrative?
Yeah. So basically, we know nothing.
And that's not even them like lying. It's just them remembering it the way they remember.
All right, we gotta get back on track real quick. I'll finish this up, and then something I left out is since they didn't deem Muslim, Islamic law, you're supposed to bury the bodies right away, and they were like, well, they're not really Muslim, so we're gonna leave their bodies out and litter the city and let them rot in the sun and let the dogs like rip them apart. So they became these great guys. So I said Osama bin Laden, 9/11. U.S. is like, turn him over. They're like, no. He goes off to Pakistan, but U.S. invades. So in 2001, they're out. But most of them also go to take sanctuary in Pakistan, because if you remember, Pakistan has a lot of ethnic ties to them, and they've supported them. And so they regroup, and they start doing major assaults in 2006. I mean, they were always doing assaults, but like 2006, they like really get after it again. And then February 29th, 2020, they signed a peace treaty with the United States. And August 15th or 13th? They take back Kabul, and they are now in power again. So it all comes full circle.
Well, that's everything, everybody. Well, not everything for Afghanistan's history. As I said before, they have thousands and thousands of years of history, and I encourage you to go look it up. There's the ancient Chinese who fought a war with them to secure these great horses they had that the Chinese wanted. There's Alexander the Great's conquest, many different empires rising, Kabul once being called 1,000 splendid suns. Basically, there's a lot you can learn. And hopefully you learned and enjoyed a part of Afghan's history. All right, till next time.